pharmacist called. Someone tried to fill a prescription in your name you never requested. My heart sank. I knew exactly who it was. I drove straight to my daughter-in-law's house. When she opened the door and saw my face, she went pale and stammered, "I can explain." But what I did next left her speechless. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The phone rang at 10:17 on a Tuesday morning. I was wiping down the kitchen counter, the smell of lemon cleaner sharp in the air. I saw the name on the screen, Patel's Pharmacy. I answered, expecting a reminder about a flu shot. "Mrs. Johnson, Alina." Mr. Patel's voice was low, stripped of its usual pleasant cadence. "Yes, Raj, is everything all right?" A pause. I heard the rustle of paper. "I need to ask you a question, and it is important. Did you call in a prescription for oxycodone this morning, to be picked up at our branch on Elm Street?" My hand stopped moving on the countertop. "No, I did not." He exhaled, a sound of both frustration and relief. "I did not think so, but someone did. They used your name, your date of birth, and the last 4 digits of the insurance number we have on file. They gave a callback number that is not yours. The prescription was called in from a clinic we do not recognize. I became suspicious and halted the process." The lemon scent turned acrid. I leaned against the counter. "Who picked it up?" "No one. I stopped it before it was filled. But the attempt was made. Alina, this is identity theft for a controlled substance. This is serious." I knew. The knowledge arrived not as a shock, but as a cold, solid weight settling in my stomach. I saw the pattern before I allowed myself to name it. "What was the dosage?" My own voice sounded distant. 10 milligrams, 30 tablets. The prescribing doctor's name was listed as Dr. M. Vance. Do you know this doctor? "I do not." I closed my eyes. The pieces connected with a quiet, terrible click. The missed family dinners. The financial complaints from Marcus that seemed vague. The new, constant fatigue in Chloe's eyes, which she blamed on anxiety. The way she would sometimes seem perfectly fine, her laughter too bright, and other times withdrawn, her hands trembling. "What do you want me to do?" Mr. Patel asked. "I have flagged your file. I can report this to the insurance company and the authorities. There will be a record." "Wait," the word came out sharp. "Raj, wait. Before you do anything official, please, give me 24 hours. Another pause, longer. "Alina, this is not a small thing." "I know what it is. I believe I know who it is. I need to handle this first, as a family matter." He was silent for a moment. I could picture him in his white coat behind the high counter, his brow furrowed. He had filled Marcus's pediatric antibiotics. He had helped me choose the right calcium supplement after Robert died. He was part of the landscape of our lives. 24 hours, he finally said. "Then I am obligated to report the fraud, for your protection and for ours." "I understand. Thank you, Raj." I set the phone down on the granite. The sunlight through the bay window fell across the floor in a bright rectangle. Everything in my kitchen was in its place. The canisters lined up. The dish towel folded. My world was orderly, or it had been 5 minutes ago. I walked to my home office, a small room lined with bookshelves. My movements were deliberate. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. I logged into my medical portal. I navigated to the prescription history. There it was, a prescription for oxycodone, 5 milligrams, dated 4 months prior, issued by Dr. Alicia Shore, my primary care physician, following a dental implant procedure. I had taken 3 tablets from the 15 prescribed. The bottle was in my medicine cabinet, nearly full. I had refused a refill. I scrolled further. Another entry from 2 months ago, oxycodone, 10 milligrams, listed as filled at a pharmacy chain across town. I had never seen that bottle. I had never been to that pharmacy. I checked the insurance claims section. A copay had been processed. My deductible had been slightly met. I printed the pages. The printer hummed, spitting out the evidence. I held the warm paper. The facts were in black and white. My identity, my medical integrity, my financial record, all compromised. I thought of Chloe. I thought of her smiling at my dinner table, complimenting my roast chicken. I thought of her hugging Marcus, her head on his shoulder. I thought of the way she sometimes called me Mom, a word that still felt new and delicate. And then I thought of her using my name to feed a hunger that had nothing to do with me. A calculation had been made. My trust, my stability, had been weighed against her need and found expendable. Anger rose, but it was a quiet, focused thing. It did not heat my skin, it clarified my vision. This was not a moment for tears or shouting. This was a problem to be solved, a boundary to be enforced, a wrong to be made right. I placed the printed sheets into a plain manila folder. I went to my bedroom and changed from my comfortable pants into a pair of slacks and a simple blouse, armor for the day. I collected my purse, my keys, the folder. I stood in the front hallway, looking at my reflection in the mirror by the door. My silver and black hair was neat. My face was composed. Only my eyes held a different light, a hardness I usually reserved for students who deliberately damaged library books. I knew where Chloe would be. Marcus would be at work. She worked from home on Tuesdays. Her townhouse was a 20-minute drive away. I did not call ahead. A warning would give her time to construct a lie. I needed to see her face when I arrived. As I backed the car out of the driveway, I considered my options. I could have called Marcus first. I could have called the police, as Mr. Patel had suggested. But those were reactions. I needed to act. This violation was against me. The first response would be mine. The drive was a series of familiar turns. Past the library where I used to work. Past the park. The normalcy of the scene outside the windshield contrasted with the turmoil inside the car. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind reviewed the facts, the prescription, the insurance claim, the timing, the changes in her behavior. It was a puzzle, and now I had the final piece. I turned onto their street. Their townhouse was the third one with a blue door. Marcus had been so proud when they bought it. I parked at the curb. I saw her car in the driveway. The curtains in the front window were closed, though it was the middle of the day. I sat for a full minute, the folder on the passenger seat. This was the line. On one side was the family I thought I had. On the other was a truth I had to face and make them face. I picked up the folder and got out of the car. The walk to the blue door felt long. I pressed the doorbell. I heard movement inside, then nothing. I rang again. The door opened a few inches, held by a chain. Chloe's face appeared in the gap. Her eyes were puffy. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. She wore a large sweatshirt. "Elle, what are you doing here?" Her voice was thick. "We need to talk, Chloe." I kept my tone even neutral. "Please open the door." "Now's not really a good time. I'm not feeling well. Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "Everything is not okay. Open the door." The chain rattled. The door swung open. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. The living room was dim and untidy. Coffee cups and magazines littered the table. The air smelled stale. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I did not sit down. I held the folder at my side. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting from my face to the folder. "I received a call from my pharmacist this morning," I began. "Someone tried to fill a prescription for oxycodone using my name and my insurance at a pharmacy on Elm Street." Her face went pale. The color drained so completely I could see the faint freckles across her nose. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I checked my medical records online," I continued, my words precise. "I found a prior fraudulent fill from 2 months ago at a different pharmacy." She swallowed. "I can explain." I waited. I said nothing. The silence stretched, forcing her to fill it. It was one time, a few months ago. My back was killing me from that old injury, and I didn't have a doctor here, and I was desperate. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake." I opened the folder. I took out the top sheet and held it so she could see. It was the insurance claim from 2 months ago. "This says 10 milligrams, 30 tablets. The call this morning was for the same. This is not one mistake, Chloe. This is a pattern. You stole my identity. You committed fraud. You jeopardized my medical history." Tears welled in her eyes. They were not the tears of remorse I saw, but of panic, of a trapped animal. I'll pay you back for the copay. I promise. Please don't tell Marcus, it would break his heart. It was the pain, it just got away from me. Please. I looked at her, this young woman in the messy living room, trembling in her too big sweatshirt. The charming daughter-in-law was gone. In her place was someone scared and selfish, who had set my life on fire to keep herself warm. We are going to tell Marcus, I said. The decision solidified as I spoke the words. You and I together, today, he needs to hear this from you. Her panic sharpened into fear. No, you can't, Elle, please. That is not a request. I placed the sheet back in the folder. You will call him. You will tell him he needs to come home now. You will tell him it is an emergency concerning me. When he arrives, you will tell him the truth, all of it. I saw the calculation return to her eyes, the search for an escape. And if I do? Then I will call Mr. Patel and authorize him to file the full report with the insurance company and the police. I will show Marcus this evidence. You will have no control over the narrative or the consequences. I met her gaze. This is the only choice I am giving you, confession or prosecution. She stared at me, really seeing me for perhaps the first time. Not as Marcus's kindly mother, but as a woman with a spine of steel. The woman who had managed a library of unruly children for 30 years. The woman who had buried a husband and kept living. Her shoulders slumped, the fight left her. She gave a single, shaky nod. Call him, I said. I walked to the sofa, moved a stack of clothing aside, and sat down. I placed the folder on my lap. I would wait. Chloe picked up her phone from the coffee table. Her hands shook so badly she had to use both to navigate the screen. She found Marcus's contact and pressed call, putting it on speaker. I watched her. I listened. It rang twice. Hey, babe. Marcus's voice came through, busy background keyboard clicks behind him. What's up? Marcus, her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. You need to come home now. The keyboard sound stopped. What? Why? Are you okay? Is it the car? It's about your mom. She's here. It's an emergency. Please just come home. The plea was genuine, a thread of pure fear. A beat of silence. Is Mom hurt? What happened? She's not hurt, just please. I can't explain over the phone. She looked at me, her eyes begging me to intervene. I remained silent. Okay, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Chloe placed the phone back on the table as if it were hot. She wrapped her arms around herself again, retreating to a large armchair across from me. She drew her knees up to her chest. We did not speak. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of a clock from another room. I studied the space. The disorder was new. Chloe had always been particular about decor, about trendy, minimalist cleanliness. Now, dust coated the shelves. A wilting plant sat on the windowsill. This was not the home of a busy young professional. This was the home of someone who was disappearing. The wait was a tactical period. It allowed the reality of the situation to settle on Chloe. It gave me time to order my thoughts. I would not speak for her. I would not explain for her. My role was witness and enforcer. The folder on my lap was an anchor. 23 minutes later, I heard a car door slam outside. Rapid footsteps approached the front door. A key turned in the lock. Marcus burst in, his work laptop bag slung over one shoulder, his face a mask of alarm. Mom, what's going on? He looked from me, seated calmly on the sofa, to Chloe, curled tightly in the chair. Chloe, what emergency? Chloe uncurled slightly. She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. She looked at me, a silent scream for mercy. I nodded once, a small, firm motion. You will do this. Marcus dropped his bag by the door. Someone talk to me, now. Chloe has something she needs to tell you, I said. My voice was calm, a librarian directing a patron to the correct section. It concerns me. It concerns all of us. Marcus turned to his wife. Chloe. She took a ragged breath. I did something really bad. The words were a whisper. What did you do? His tone shifted from concern to confusion. I used your mom's information, her name, her insurance. Each phrase was a struggle. For what? What are you talking about? For medicine. A tear rolled down her cheek. Pain medicine, oxycodone. Marcus blinked. He shook his head slightly, as if physically rejecting the words. What? No, why would you? You don't have a prescription for that. I got one. I called a clinic online. I used Elle's information. I've done it more than once. The confusion on his face hardened into dawning comprehension, then disbelief. You stole Mom's identity to get pills. He said it slowly, testing the absurdity of the statement. Chloe nodded, burying her face in her knees. Marcus looked at me. Mom, is this true? I opened the folder. I extracted the printed medical portal page and the notes I had taken during my call with Mr. Patel. I held them out to him. He crossed the room and took them. He read them standing there in the middle of the messy living room. I watched his face. I saw the moment the professional, logical part of his brain parsed the data, the dates, the dosages, the pharmacy names, and collided with the personal horror. His skin grew ashen. The pharmacist called me this morning, I said, when he looked up from the papers. He stopped a fraudulent fill. He was going to report it. I asked him for 24 hours to handle it as a family. Marcus stared at the papers in his hand. How long? He asked, his voice flat. Chloe mumbled into her knees. A few months. Look at me. His voice was low, but it cut through the room. How long, Chloe? She lifted her head. Her face was blotchy. Since my back flared up again in the spring, the doctor from my surgery wouldn't refill it anymore. I was in so much pain. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't know what else to do? He repeated the phrase with icy precision. You could have gone to a doctor here. You could have told me. You could have told my mother you were in pain. Instead, you committed a felony against her. I was ashamed, she cried, the words bursting out. And I was scared, and then I needed it. Not just for the pain, I needed it to feel normal, to get through the day. The admission hung in the air. The unspoken word, addiction, now lay on the floor between us all, undeniable. Marcus turned his back on her. He ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. He looked out the front window, his shoulders rigid. The room was silent except for Chloe's stifled sobs. I saw the conflict in the line of his back. The husband who wanted to fix things to protect his wife. The son who was appalled at the betrayal of his mother. The man whose own home had become a crime scene. What happens now? He finally asked, still facing the window. He was asking me. That is up to Chloe, I said, and to you. He turned around. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. The pharmacist will report it. There will be legal consequences. There do not have to be, I said. I closed the folder. Not if we handle it correctly. Not if Chloe chooses the harder path. What path? Chloe asked, a sliver of hope in her voice. I looked at her, then at my son. I will not press charges. I will ask Mr. Patel not to file the report, on one condition. Anything, Chloe said immediately, uncurling from the chair. It is not anything, I corrected. It is one specific thing. You will commit to getting well. You will follow a plan that I will help structure. It will involve professional treatment. Full financial restitution to me and to the insurance company. Complete transparency. And Marcus will be involved not as a shield, but as a partner in your accountability. Marcus stared at me. You've already thought this through. I have had the car ride over to think, I said. And a lifetime of dealing with crises. This is not a negotiation, Chloe. This is an ultimatum. You accept this path with all its difficulty and humiliation, or you face the legal system. I will not enable you by staying silent. My silence would be complicity. Chloe wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. She looked at Marcus. I'm so sorry, to both of you. I'll do it. I'll do whatever she says. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was grappling with the magnitude of it, the deceit, the addiction, the sudden role of his mother as both victim and judge. What kind of plan? He asked me. We will discuss the specifics together, but not here. I stood up. The folder was firm in my hand. We will go to my house. Now, we will sit at my kitchen table and we will decide the terms. This is no longer a secret. It is a project, a repair project. And like any repair, it begins with assessing the full extent of the damage. I walked to the door. I picked up my purse. I did not look back to see if they were following. I knew they would. I had the car keys, I had the evidence, and I had, for the first time in this long, dreadful morning, a clear direction forward. The confrontation was over. The reckoning had just begun. I drove back to my house alone. I needed the 20 minutes of silence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Marcus's car following, a dark sedan at a careful distance. The sun was high now. It was just past noon, a normal Tuesday. I parked in my driveway and went inside. I went directly to the kitchen. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. I took out 3 mugs. I did not know if anyone would want tea, but the ritual of preparation gave my hands a task. I opened a drawer and took out a legal pad and a pen. By the time the front door opened, I was seated at the head of the table, the pad blank before me, the pen parallel to it. They entered quietly. Marcus held the door for Chloe. She looked smaller inside my clean, sunlit kitchen. She hovered near the doorway, as if unsure she was permitted to enter. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the chairs. Marcus pulled one out for Chloe, then sat beside her, facing me. The dynamic was established. I was at the head. They were supplicants. The kettle whistled. I got up and poured hot water into the 3 mugs, dropping a tea bag into each. I placed them on the table. Steam rose in thin curls. "We need to establish the facts without emotion," I began. "Then we will decide on the course of action. Chloe, you have admitted to using my personal and insurance information to obtain prescription opioids fraudulently on at least 2 documented occasions. Is that correct?" She nodded, her eyes on the table. "Yes." "Say it aloud, please, for the record." "Yes, I did that." "Marcus, you have seen the evidence from my medical portal and heard her admission. Do you acknowledge the facts as presented?" He looked pained. "Yes, Mom, I acknowledge them." "Good." I made a note on the pad. It said only, admission, 2+ instances. The potential consequences are as follows: criminal charges for identity theft and prescription fraud, a report to the insurance company leading to possible investigation and difficulty for me in obtaining future legitimate prescriptions, damage to my credit and medical history, erosion of family trust. I let the list hang in the air. My priority is to mitigate these consequences and to address the root cause. The legal system would punish. It would not heal. I am not interested in punishment alone. I am interested in repair. Chloe looked up, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. She had expected rage, condemnation. My calmness was unnerving her more than shouting would have. "Here are my conditions," I said. My voice was level, the same tone I used to explain library fines. "You have 2 choices. You can refuse and I will call Mr. Patel and the police within the hour, or you can accept and we will proceed." "What are the conditions?" Marcus asked. His voice was tired. "First, Chloe will provide me with a written, signed statement detailing every instance of fraud, including dates, pharmacies, and prescribed amounts. This is for my records only, a guarantee of full disclosure." Chloe's shoulders tensed. "A written confession." "Yes, it stays in my safe. It is insurance." "Second," I continued, "you will immediately begin an outpatient treatment program for substance use disorder. I have already researched several reputable programs in the county. You will choose one and enroll this week. You will provide me with proof of enrollment and regular progress reports from a counselor." "You want me to go to rehab?" Her voice was small. "I want you to get well. This is the structured path to do so. Third, you will provide full financial restitution. You will calculate the total of all insurance copays filed under my name, as well as any impact on my deductible. You will also pay for the cost of a comprehensive credit and medical record monitoring service for me for the next 2 years. You will set up a payment plan, approved by me." Marcus shifted in his chair. "Chloe, been having trouble at her freelance job. The money might be." "The money is a non-negotiable part of accountability," I interrupted, not unkindly. "How it is managed is between the 2 of you, but the debt must be acknowledged and a plan made." Chloe nodded slowly. "Okay." "Fourth, you will sign a release allowing me to speak directly with your treatment counselor, with the counselor's consent, so I can be assured of your compliance. Fifth, you will submit to random pharmacy checks. I will have Mr. Patel monitor any activity under my name, and you will grant him permission to verify with any other pharmacy that you are not attempting to obtain prescriptions elsewhere." "That's a lot of control," Chloe whispered. "It is a lot of accountability," I corrected. "You forfeited the right to privacy and autonomy when you committed fraud in my name. These measures are to protect me and to help you rebuild trust. They are temporary, contingent on your progress." I looked at Marcus. "Sixth, you will attend a support group for families dealing with addiction. You need to understand what you are facing. Your role cannot be that of an enabler or a blind bystander. You must become an informed participant in her recovery." He met my gaze. I saw the struggle there, the desire to protect his wife warring with the shock of her actions and the stern logic of my plan. Finally, he gave a single nod. "All right." "Finally," I said, turning my attention back to Chloe. "You will write a letter of apology to me, not now, not today, but when you have 30 days of confirmed sobriety and progress in your program. I want the apology to come from a place of genuine understanding, not from fear of jail." I set my pen down. This is the agreement. It is structured, measurable, and focused on rehabilitation. It is my alternative to revenge. Do you accept? Chloe looked at Marcus. He did not look back at her. He was staring at the surface of his untouched tea. The responsibility was hers alone. She looked at me, at the blank legal pad where her life was about to be outlined in my precise handwriting. "What if I fail?" she asked, the question barely audible. "Then the agreement is null. I will proceed with the legal report. There will be no third chance." I held her gaze. "This is the one chance, the hard chance, but it is a chance." She closed her eyes. A long breath escaped her. When she opened them, there was a faint, defeated resolve. "I accept." "Very well." I picked up the pen. I drew a line down the center of the page. On the left, I wrote conditions. On the right, I wrote status action. Under conditions asterisk, I began to list each point in my clear, cursive script. "We will draft the written statement now," I said, without looking up. "Then we will look at the treatment program websites. We will not leave this table until the first 3 actionable items are complete." The kitchen was quiet save for the scratch of my pen. This was my revenge, not shouting, not violence, not even forgiveness. It was the relentless, quiet application of order upon chaos. It was the imposition of consequences that demanded growth. It was making her sit in the chair in the bright light of my kitchen and write down every detail of her betrayal while I watched, a silent witness to the beginning of her difficult salvation. The tea grew cold in the cups. We had work to do. The written statement took over an hour. Chloe wrote slowly, her hand often pausing above the page. I did not hurry her. I sat and drank my cooled tea. Marcus left the table twice, packing to the living room window and back, saying nothing. The only sounds were the clock, the scratch of the pen, and the occasional soft sniff from Chloe. She listed 2 incidents with specific details, dates, pharmacies, dosages. When she finished, she pushed the single sheet of legal paper toward me. Her handwriting, usually bubbly and loose, was cramped and tense. I read it carefully. It was a dry, factual account. It did not include her feelings or excuses. It was exactly what I required. "This matches the evidence I have," I said, placing it on the table. "Sign and date it at the bottom." She did. I then slid the paper to Marcus. "Read it." He took it. He stood by the counter, his back to us, as he read the confession of his wife. I saw his shoulders rise with a deep breath, then fall. He held the paper for a long time. When he turned, his face was composed into a mask, but his eyes were wounded. He placed the paper back in front of me without a word. "Now," I said, opening my laptop, "we will look at the treatment programs." I had bookmarked 3. I turned the screen so they both could see. I explained each one, their approaches, their schedules, their costs. I spoke about intensive outpatient programs, about individual and group therapy. I was dispassionate, like a guidance counselor. Chloe pointed to the second one. "This one, they have evening sessions. I could maybe still work some." "You will need to call them," I said. "Today, you will explain you need an immediate assessment. I will be on the extension to ensure the call is made." The color drained from her face again, but she nodded. I brought the cordless phone to the table. I dialed the number from the website. I put it on speaker and handed it to her. The call was painful to witness. Chloe's voice was thin and shaking as she spoke to the intake coordinator. She said, "I need help with a painkiller dependency. I have committed prescription fraud to obtain them." She gave her name, her insurance information. She answered questions about frequency and dosage. She started to cry silently halfway through, but she kept talking. Marcus stared at his hands, his jaw muscle flexing. An appointment was set for an assessment in 2 days. I took down the case number and the counselor's name. When the call ended, the silence in the kitchen was heavy. "The next item is financial restitution," I said, my voice breaking through the quiet. I had already printed a form from my insurance portal showing the claims. The total was not large, a few $100s in copays. The greater cost was the credit monitoring service. I presented the annual fee. "You will pay this up front for 2 years. The copays can be in monthly installments. We will draft a simple payment schedule." Marcus finally spoke, his voice rough. "I'll cover the upfront costs. The monthly payments will come from our joint account." It was a statement, not an offer. He was inserting himself into the mechanics, trying to find a role other than betrayed husband. "That is acceptable," I said. I wrote it down on the status side of my legal pad. "Restitution, Marcus covers monitoring, joint account for copays." We drafted the payment schedule. We discussed the logistics of the pharmacy monitoring. I called Mr. Patel, again on speaker. I explained, with Chloe's consent audible on the line, that she was entering treatment and that he was authorized to deny any activity under my name and to report any suspicious inquiries directly to me. His voice was gentle but professional. "I will help, Alina. You have my support." By the time we finished, the afternoon light was slanting through the kitchen windows. We had been at the table for nearly 4 hours. The legal pad was full of notes and checkmarks. We had a plan. It was documented. "I will type this into a formal agreement tomorrow," I said, gathering the papers. "You will both sign it. I will have a copy for each of us." Chloe looked exhausted, hollowed out. Marcus looked older. I felt a profound fatigue myself, but it was a clean tiredness, the tiredness after completing necessary, difficult labor. "You should go home," I said to them. "You have things to discuss. The assessment is in 2 days. I will expect a text after it is completed." They moved like people in a dream. At the door, Marcus paused. He turned to look at me. The mask had slipped. His eyes held a confusion so deep it was almost childish. "How did you do this?" he asked. "How are you so calm?" I considered the question. "The anger is there," I said. "But anger is not a tool. It is a reaction. I needed tools today, not reactions. My job was to build a fence. A very strong, very clear fence. Inside that fence, she can do the work to get well. Outside of it are consequences I will not hesitate to enact. The calm is just the concentration it takes to build the fence straight." He absorbed that. He gave a slow, weary nod. He put his arm around Chloe's shoulders, a gesture that seemed more habit than comfort, and guided her out to their car. I closed the door. I locked it. I went back to the kitchen. I cleared the 3 untouched mugs of cold tea. I wiped the table clean of crumbs that were not there. I placed Chloe's signed confession inside the manila folder. I took it to my bedroom and locked it in the small fireproof safe where I kept my passport and Robert's will. Then I sat in my living room armchair. The quiet of the house pressed in. The structured, controlled part of the day was over. Now the feelings I had boxed away began to seep out, not as rage but as a deep, throbbing ache of betrayal. My name, my son's wife, the sheer audacity of the violation. I let the ache sit with me. I did not fight it. I observed it as if it were a weather system passing through. It was justified, but it would not dictate my actions. My revenge was not in the ache. It was in the lines on the legal pad. It was in the assessment appointment. It was in the signed confession in the safe. It was a cold, hard architecture of accountability, and I had laid the foundation today. The rest would be a test of whether she had the strength to build something new within the walls I had erected. I sat in the darkening room, and for the first time that day, I felt not like a victim, but like an engineer. The next morning, I sat at my computer. The sun was bright through the office window. I opened a blank document. I titled it Agreement for Accountability and Rehabilitation. I am not a lawyer, but I was a librarian for 30 years. I know how to structure information, how to cite sources, and how to make terms clear. I began with a preamble. It stated the facts in simple language: the discovery of prescription fraud on specific dates, the admission of guilt by Chloe Elizabeth Miller, and the mutual desire to avoid legal proceedings through a structured private agreement. I used the words parties and whereas. It gave the document weight. Then I listed the terms, each in its own numbered section. I used the notes from my legal pad. Section 1, Treatment. Chloe would enroll and actively participate in the designated intensive outpatient program. She would provide weekly progress reports from her counselor to me via email. She would authorize her counselor to speak with me if concerns arose regarding attendance or compliance. Section 2, Financial Restitution. I attached the payment schedule as Exhibit A. It listed the amounts, the due dates, and the method of payment. I included the receipt for the 2-year credit monitoring service, which Marcus had already paid online the previous evening. Section 3, Pharmacy Monitoring. Chloe would grant written permission to Rajesh Patel of Patel's Pharmacy to deny any prescription activity under my name and to report any attempts to me immediately. She would also provide a list of all pharmacies she had used in the past year, and I would contact them to place a fraud alert. Section 4, Family Support. Marcus would attend a minimum of 6 meetings of a support group for families affected by addiction within the next 3 months. He would provide me with meeting receipts or signed slips. Section 5, Communication. We would have a brief, structured check-in by phone every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for the first 3 months. The purpose was to address logistical issues, not for emotional discussion. Section 6, Breach of Agreement. If Chloe failed to meet any major term, such as dropping out of treatment, failing a drug test, or attempting to obtain pills fraudulently, the agreement would be void. I would then be free to pursue all legal options available to me. At the end, I left spaces for 3 signatures and the date. I printed 3 copies. The pages emerged from the printer warm and official. I read them over twice, making sure every clause was precise, every consequence outlined. It was fair. It was also unyielding. I called Marcus. I have drafted the agreement. I will bring it to your house this evening at 6. We will all read it together and sign it. His voice was flat. Okay. At 5:55 p.m., I parked in front of their townhouse. The blue door looked the same. I carried the copies in a simple folder. Marcus answered my knock. The living room was noticeably cleaner. The coffee table was clear. The dust was gone. Chloe sat on the sofa, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair clean and pulled back. She looked like she had not slept. I sat in the armchair. I handed a copy to each of them. Read it carefully, take your time, ask for clarification on any point. The room was silent as they read. Marcus's eyes moved quickly down the page, his lips pressed into a thin line. Chloe read slowly, her finger tracing each line. I watched her face. I saw her flinch when she reached the breach clause. When they both looked up, Marcus spoke first. The support group meetings, is that really necessary? Yes, I said. You need to understand what addiction is. You need tools to navigate this without enabling. This is not a punishment. It is an education. He nodded, looking back at the page. Chloe's voice was small. The weekly check-in, what will we talk about? Practical matters. I have my therapy appointment on Tuesday. The payment was sent. I spoke with Mr. Patel. It maintains a channel of communication without allowing for manipulation or emotional pleas. It is a business meeting about the project of your recovery. She absorbed that, and the progress reports from my counselor. You'll see everything. I will see what the counselor is willing to share regarding your attendance and general participation. I do not need or want to know the details of your therapy. I need to verify you are present and engaged. She looked at the document in her hands. It was 6 pages long. It made the crisis tangible, something to be managed in bullet points and signatures. It's very formal. It needs to be, I said. Informality is what allowed this to happen. We are replacing secrets with structure. Marcus picked up a pen from the clean coffee table. Where do we sign? At the end, but I want you both to be certain. Once you sign, you are bound to it. As am I, my part of the agreement is to not pursue legal action so long as its terms are met. This is the entire deal. Chloe looked at Marcus. He did not look back. He was already signing his name on the first copy with a firm, quick stroke. She picked up her own pen. Her hand hovered for a moment. Then she signed. Her signature was shaky but legible. I signed all 3 copies last, my own signature smooth and practiced. I handed 1 copy to each of them. I placed the 3rd back in my folder. The program assessment is tomorrow at 10, I said, standing. I will expect a text confirming you attended. The Sunday check-in will begin this week. Do you have any questions before I leave? Marcus stood as well. No questions. His tone was not hostile but detached. He was in execution mode. Chloe remained on the sofa, holding her copy of the agreement. No questions. I left them there in their clean, quiet living room with the document between them. As I drove home, I considered what I had done. Some would say I was cruel, that I was controlling, that I should have just forgiven or just called the police. But forgiveness without accountability is just permission for it to happen again, and the police would have brought punishment without healing. This was a 3rd path, my path. It was a prescription, written not by a doctor, but by a woman who had spent a lifetime understanding that order is a form of kindness. The dosage was strict. The regimen was demanding. The side effects would be emotional turmoil, but the intended outcome was restoration. My revenge was not in the suffering, but in the insistence on health. I was forcing her to walk a narrow, difficult road back to personhood, and I was making my son walk a parallel path out of his comfortable ignorance. The signed agreements in my safe and in their hands were the maps. Now they had to choose whether to follow the route. The control was an illusion. The real power, I knew, would be in their choice to comply. I had built the fence. The walking was up to them. The first 2 Sunday check-ins were brief and functional. Chloe's voice was subdued but compliant. She reported attending her therapy sessions. Marcus confirmed he had gone to a support group meeting. I received the first progress report from her counselor via email. It stated she was engaged and participating. I filed it in the folder with the agreement. The fence was holding. The 3rd Sunday, Marcus called alone. Chloe, not feeling well, he said. His tone was tight. She asked me to do the check-in. Is she physically ill? I asked. A migraine. She's lying down. Please relay that she needs to email me her therapy attendance confirmation for last week by tomorrow morning. The agreement requires it. I'll tell her, he paused. Mom, she's trying, it's hard. I know it is hard. The agreement accounts for difficulty. It does not account for absence of verification. We ended the call. The requested email did not arrive on Monday morning. At 2 p.m., I sent a reminder text to Chloe. No response. At 4 p.m., I called the outpatient program's main office. I identified myself as an emergency contact listed by Chloe Miller. I asked to confirm her attendance at the last scheduled group session. The clerk put me on hold. When she returned, her voice was polite but firm. I'm sorry, we can only release attendance information to the patient or with a signed release on file. Do you have a release? I do, I said. I will fax it to you now. I retrieved the signed release from my folder, used the scanner on my printer to create a PDF, and faxed it to the number she provided. I called back 20 minutes later. The same clerk answered. Yes, Mrs. Johnson, I have the release. Regarding Chloe Miller's attendance, she was marked absent for the Thursday evening group session. She did not call to cancel. Thank you, I said, my voice even. I hung up. The absence was a breach. A single breach, but a defined one. The agreement stated that consistent attendance was a major term. I decided to wait. I wanted to see if she would contact me if an explanation would be offered. None came. On Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. It was Mr. Patel. Eleanor, can you call the pharmacy when convenient? I called immediately. Raj. Eleanor, A question has come up. An online prescription service has submitted a refill request for your name. For a different medication this time, a benzodiazepine. The requesting doctor is another one I do not recognize. The delivery address is a P.O. box in the next town over. The cold, solid weight returned to my stomach. You declined it. Of course, the system flagged it automatically because of my notes. But Alina, this is a new attempt. Different drug, different method. It is more sophisticated. Thank you, Raj. Please block any and all requests from any online service. No exceptions. I have already done so. You should consider a full fraud alert with the insurance company now. I will handle it, I said. Thank you. I sat at my kitchen table. The betrayal was no longer a past event. It was a present, ongoing action. She had missed her therapy. She had lied about a migraine. And she had attempted to circumvent the entire structure I had built by using a different drug, a different pharmacy conduit. The fence had been tested, and she had tried to dig under it. I did not call Chloe. I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, sounding distracted. Hey, Mom, I'm at work. This cannot wait. Did you know Chloe missed her therapy session last Thursday? Silence, then a weary sigh. She said she rescheduled it. She said she had a conflict with a client call. She did not reschedule it. The program has no record of a reschedule. She was marked absent. Furthermore, this morning, an online pharmacy attempted to fill a prescription for a controlled substance in my name to be sent to a P.O. box. The timing is not a coincidence. The line was so quiet I could hear the hum of his computer through the phone. No, he finally said, the word a soft groan. She promised. She's been doing better. She has been lying to you, Marcus. Again, the agreement is clear. This constitutes a breach. What are you going to do? His voice held a note of panic. What the agreement says I will do. I am going to enforce the consequences. We will have a meeting, tonight, at my house, you and Chloe. We will discuss the evidence, and she will decide, finally, which path she is on. Mom, please, can't we just... No, I interrupted. My tone left no room. There is no just. There is the agreement, and there is the breach. The meeting is at 7 o'clock. Be here. I ended the call. I felt a sharp disappointment, but it was quickly subsumed by a colder, more determined resolve. I had offered a lifeline made of structure and difficult grace. She had chosen, again, the deception of the quick fix. My revenge was not in anger, but in the removal of the lifeline. She would now see the consequences she had agreed to in writing, in her own shaky signature. I took the signed agreement from the folder. I reviewed Section 6. I placed it on the table next to my phone. Then I prepared for the meeting. I would be calm. I would present the facts, the attendance record from the program, the log from Mr. Patel. I would not yell. I would not plead. I would simply show her the cliff's edge she was walking toward and remind her that the safety net she had been offered was now being withdrawn. The control she resented was the very thing that had been protecting her from the fall. Now she would face the choice, unprotected. That was the consequence. That was the point of no return. After I told Marcus to come at 7, I put the phone down. I looked at the agreement on the table. The breach was documented. The next steps were clear. Yet for the first time since the pharmacist's call, I felt a tremor of doubt. Not about the facts, not about the terms, but about the sheer, solitary weight of enforcing them. I was the judge, the jury, and the architect of this difficult justice. The isolation of that role pressed down on me. I walked to the living room bookcase. My eyes went not to the novels, but to a framed photograph on the shelf. It was of me with 2 other women, taken at a library fundraiser years ago, Gloria and Jean. We had met in a book club 20 years earlier, a club that had long since dissolved, but our friendship had remained. We were all widows now. We had all raised sons. We had all navigated losses that were not discussed in polite company. I picked up my phone again. I did not call Marcus or Chloe. I called Gloria. She answered on the 3rd ring. Alina, to what do I owe the pleasure in the middle of a Wednesday? I need to talk, I said. My voice sounded strained to my own ears. I need advice. Can you and Jean come over, now if possible? A pause. Of course, give us 30 minutes. I called Jean next. She agreed without question. I put the kettle on. I set out 3 cups. This time I knew the tea would be drunk. They arrived together. Gloria tall and regal, her gray hair in its usual elegant twist. Jean softer and rounder, her eyes quick and kind. They settled in my living room, accepting their cups. They did not ask frivolous questions. They waited. I am in a difficult family situation, I began. I cannot share names or specifics, but I need the wisdom of people who have weathered storms. All right, Gloria said, sipping her tea. Set the scene without the characters. A young person in my family has committed a serious, repetitive wrong against me, a betrayal of trust and legality. I discovered it. I confronted it. I offered a structured alternative to legal ruin, a strict path to amends and rehabilitation. They agreed. They have now broken that agreement. They lied. They attempted to repeat the wrong in a different way. I am now faced with enforcing the consequences, which are severe. The enforcement will likely fracture the family further. Jean nodded slowly. And the alternative to enforcement is to relent, to accept more lies, to enable the behavior, to make my original terms meaningless. And the young person, Gloria asked, are they ill? They have an addiction. They are refusing to treat it with the seriousness it requires, despite being given the framework to do so. Gloria and Jean exchanged a look. It was a look of profound understanding, stripped of judgment. My nephew, Derek, Jean said, placing her cup on the saucer. He stole from my sister, jewelry first, then money from her purse. He had a gambling problem. She found receipts. She covered for him, paid his debts, twice. The 3rd time he took the car and wrecked it. She finally said, no more, you go to treatment and you work to pay me back or I call the police. He called her bluff. She called the police. He served 6 months. It was the worst 6 months of her life. But he has been clean and employed for 5 years now. He says those 6 months saved him. She says they nearly killed her. The room was quiet. I absorbed the story. The parallel was clear. My storm was different, Gloria said. Not addiction, but betrayal. My son's first wife. She was corrosive, manipulative. She turned him against me for a time, said terrible things. I wanted to fight fire with fire, to expose her to him. My pastor told me, Gloria, sometimes you have to stand so still and so quiet that they have to come around to see your face. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, to be silent. To not defend myself, to just be who I had always been. It took 2 years. She left him. He came back, full of apologies. My stillness was my revenge. It gave him nothing to push against but his own conscience. I listened. These were not metaphors. They were case studies. One involved the fierce application of consequence. The other involved the fierce application of patience. Both required a steel core. What does your gut tell you to do? Jean asked me. To enforce the consequences, I said without hesitation. The agreement was the mercy. Breaking it means the mercy is gone. Only the law remains. Then you have your answer, Gloria said. But it will cause so much pain, I said. The words left me, revealing the fear I had boxed away. The pain is already there, Jean replied gently. You didn't create it. You discovered it. Your agreement was an attempt to surgically remove the sickness. If the patient is ripping out the stitches, you have to consider a more drastic procedure to save the patient and to protect yourself from infection. The medical analogy was apt. It was how I had thought of it from the beginning, a prescription. They will hate me, I said, looking at my hands. Maybe, Gloria acknowledged. For a time, but hate born of consequence is different from hate born of malice. One has a limit, the other does not. You are acting from principle, not from spite. That will matter eventually. We drank our tea. They did not offer platitudes. They did not tell me everything would be okay. They shared their pain and their outcomes, and in doing so, they normalized mine. I was not a monster. I was a woman facing a terrible, familiar calculus. What would Robert have advised? Jean asked after a while. She had known my husband well. I thought for a moment. Robert had been a civil engineer. He believed in load-bearing structures and safety factors. He would have said that a contract is only as strong as the willingness to uphold it, that to ignore a breach is to design for collapse. Gloria smiled a small, sad smile. There you are. After an hour, they left. They hugged me at the door, a firm, double embrace that felt like being bolstered by bookends. "We are here," Jean said, "for whatever comes next." I closed the door. The house was quiet again, but the solitary feeling was gone. It had been replaced by a sense of precedent. I was not the first woman to stand at this terrible crossroads. I would not be the last. My friends had not told me what to do. They had simply confirmed that the tools I possessed, clarity, principle, and the strength to endure the fallout, were the right tools for this job. I returned to the kitchen table. I looked at the agreement. My doubt had evaporated. The tremor was gone. The meeting at 7 o'clock would proceed. I would present the evidence. I would state the consequences. I would not waver. My revenge was not in the causing of pain, but in the refusal to absorb it anymore. I had offered a way out that required work from her. She had refused the work. Now, the only paths left were the ones she had feared from the beginning. I felt a calm resolution. This was the burden and the privilege of holding the line. My circle of wisdom had reminded me that sometimes the most heartwarming justice is the one that does not feel warm at all while it is being served. It feels like stone. But stone holds up bridges. They arrived at 5 minutes past 7. Marcus's face was set in grim lines. Chloe's eyes were red-rimmed, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. She did not look at me. I led them not to the living room, but to the dining table, which I had cleared. 3 chairs were arranged. On the table lay 3 items: the signed agreement, the printed email from the treatment program showing her absence, and my handwritten notes from the call with Mr. Patel detailing the online prescription attempt. "Sit," I said. They sat. I remained standing. I picked up the agreement. "We are here because of a breach. Section 6. I read the clause aloud, my voice neutral. If Chloe failed to meet any major term, such as dropping out of treatment, failing a drug test, or attempting to obtain pills fraudulently, the agreement would be void. I would then be free to pursue all legal options available to me. I placed the agreement down. I picked up the email from the treatment program. "This is confirmation from the Greenbrook Outpatient Center that you were marked absent for your mandatory group session on Thursday last week. You did not call to cancel or reschedule." I slid the paper across the table toward them. Marcus looked at it. Chloe stared at the tabletop. I then picked up my notes. "This is my record of a conversation with Mr. Patel this morning. An online pharmacy attempted to fill a new prescription for a controlled substance in my name. The delivery address was a P.O. box in Millerton. The drug was different. The method was different. The intent was the same." I placed that paper next to the first. "This constitutes a direct attempt to obtain pills fraudulently, less than 3 weeks after signing an agreement explicitly forbidding it. This is not a slip. This is a calculated action." Chloe finally spoke, her voice a husk. "I didn't pick anything up. It was just a request. It didn't go through." "The attempt is the breach," I said. "The agreement does not distinguish between success and failure. It distinguishes between action and inaction. You took action." Marcus put his head in his hands. "Chloe, why?" She did not answer him. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of defiance beneath the fear. "You have no proof it was me. It could have been anyone, someone else who stole your information." "That is possible," I acknowledged calmly. "But it is not probable. The timing, following your missed session and your lies to Marcus, creates a logical sequence. However, you are correct. I do not have definitive proof, which is why I am not calling the police tonight." She blinked, confused. "I am giving you a final choice," I said. I remained standing, looking down at them both. "But this choice requires a witness beyond this family. Tomorrow morning, you will both meet me at the office of a substance abuse counselor I have contacted. Her name is Dr. Irene Moss. She has agreed to a 1-hour emergency session. During that session, you, Chloe, will take a drug test. You will sign a release allowing Dr. Moss to speak with your current treatment counselor. You will authorize her to receive the report from Mr. Patel, and you will listen as I present this evidence to her." Chloe's defiance crumbled back into panic. "A drug test? I caw." "You can, and you will. If you refuse, I will interpret that as an admission of guilt and proceed with the police report. If you take the test and it is negative, and if Dr. Moss, after reviewing all information, believes there is reasonable doubt that you made this attempt, then the agreement will be reinstated with stricter monitoring. However, if the test is positive, or if Dr. Moss determines the evidence points conclusively to you, then you will have one last option. What option? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. You will voluntarily enter a more intensive residential treatment program, a 30-day minimum program that I have already vetted. You will go directly from Dr. Moss's office to that facility. You will complete the program. There will be no negotiation, no outpatient compromise. If you agree to this, I will still not press charges. If you refuse, I will leave Dr. Moss's office and drive directly to the police station with this folder. The ultimatum hung in the quiet dining room. It was the end of the road for compromises. You've already arranged all this, Marcus said, a mix of awe and horror in his tone. Yes, I spoke with Dr. Moss this afternoon. She has an opening at 10 a.m. The treatment center has a bed available starting tomorrow. The machinery is in place. The only variable is Chloe's decision. Chloe was crying now, silent tears streaking her face. You're trying to lock me away. I am trying to save your life, I said, my voice gaining a rare, sharp edge. And to protect mine, you are drowning, Chloe, and you are pulling everyone down with you. I threw you a rope, the agreement. You tried to use it to tie a noose. I am now offering a lifeboat. It is uncomfortable. It is confining. But it is designed to float. The alternative is to let you sink and to swim clear myself before you take me under. Those are the choices. The compassionate choice and the legal choice have merged. They are now the same choice. Intensive treatment or intensive prosecution. Marcus reached over and took Chloe's hand. She did not pull away. She gripped it like it was the only solid thing in the room. Will you come to the appointment tomorrow? I asked. Will you take the test and accept Dr. Moss's judgment? Chloe looked at Marcus, then at the damning papers on the table. Her shoulders slumped in utter defeat. The fight was gone. The lies were exhausted. Yes, she whispered. I'll go. The appointment is at 10. Be at my house at 9:15. We will drive together. I gathered the papers back into the folder. That is all for tonight. They left without another word. I watched their car pull away. The meeting had been brief, surgical. There had been no yelling, no begging, just the presentation of evidence and the delineation of a final, narrow path. My revenge was in the removal of every other path. It was in the cold, clear funnel I had constructed, leading to only two exits, salvation or incarceration. She had chosen, for now, to walk toward the harder salvation. I had no illusions. The walk was just beginning. But for the first time, she would be walking in the full, unflinching light of professional truth, with no shadows in which to hide. They arrived at my house at 9:15 the next morning. Chloe wore simple clothes, jeans, a plain t-shirt, a light jacket. She carried a small duffel bag. Marcus looked like he had not slept. We drove to Dr. Moss's office in silence. The office was in a quiet medical building, neutral and professional. Dr. Moss was a woman in her 50s with a calm, direct manner. She shook each of our hands and guided us to a small conference room. She explained the process. Chloe would provide a urine sample first. She would then join us for a discussion. Chloe left with a nurse without a word. While we waited, I presented the folder to Dr. Moss. She reviewed the agreement, the attendance report, my notes from Mr. Patel. She asked Marcus questions about Chloe's behavior over the past months. He answered haltingly, the pieces of his wife's secret life snapping into a coherent, painful picture for him under the counselor's gentle probing. Chloe returned. The nurse brought in the results 10 minutes later. They were positive for opioids. Dr. Moss placed the lab report on the table. The test confirms active use, Chloe. Combined with the evidence of the missed session and the attempted prescription refill, it's clear the outpatient framework isn't containing the behavior. The addiction is currently stronger than the outpatient structure. Chloe stared at the positive result. She did not deny it. She simply nodded, a gesture of surrender. Your mother-in-law has outlined a proposal for residential treatment, Dr. Moss continued. I have reviewed the facility. It is reputable. Based on what I see today, I concur with the recommendation. I believe it is the necessary level of care. Do I have to go right now? Chloe asked, her voice thin. The bed is available today, I said. Delaying would be another opportunity for resistance. The choice is still yours. But the alternative is that I leave here and file the police report. Dr. Moss can attest to the evidence she has seen." Chloe looked at Marcus. His eyes were wet, but his voice was firm. "You have to go, Chloe. It's the only way. I'll be here. I'll visit every time they allow." She closed her eyes. A single tear tracked down her cheek. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll go." Dr. Moss helped facilitate the admission. She made a call. She provided directions. She gave Marcus a list of what Chloe could bring. We drove from her office directly to the treatment center, a 40-minute drive to a facility set back from the road among pine trees. It looked more like a dormitory than a hospital. The admission process was bureaucratic: paperwork, inventory of her bag, surrender of her phone and laptop. Chloe moved through it like an automaton. When it came time for us to leave, she stood in the common area, looking small and lost. Marcus hugged her tightly, whispering something in her ear. She nodded against his shoulder. Then she turned to me. She did not hug me. She met my eyes. "Thank you," she said, the words barely audible, "for not giving up." I inclined my head, a slight, silent acknowledgement. Then we left. The drive home was silent. The next 30 days were a vigil. Marcus attended his support meetings religiously. He visited Chloe every Saturday. He reported to me, not because the agreement demanded it, but because he needed to say the words aloud. "She looks tired. She says the group sessions are hard. She asked about you." I did not visit. My presence, I felt, would be a pressure, not a comfort, but I wrote. Every week I mailed a simple card to Chloe at the facility. No long letters, just a few lines. "Thinking of you. Hope this week is one of strength. Marcus says you are working hard." I signed them simply L. It was a thread, thin but persistent, connecting the structure I had built to the person inside it. After 30 days, there was a family day. Marcus begged me to come. I agreed. We sat in a circle with other families. Chloe looked different, not healed but present. Her eyes were clearer. She spoke about recognizing her patterns of manipulation. She did not look at me when she said it, but I knew the words were in part for me. The hard road back was just that, hard. After residential treatment, she stepped down to a rigorous daily outpatient program. She got a new counselor. She started attending recovery meetings herself. Marcus continued his support groups. The Sunday check-ins became, by mutual unspoken agreement, shared dinners at my house. They were quiet affairs. The conversation was careful, often about neutral topics, but the lies were absent. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, nearly 3 months after she entered the facility, Chloe came to my house alone. Marcus was at work. She rang the bell. I opened the door. She stood on the porch, the spring sun behind her. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Of course." We sat in the living room. She was nervous. She clasped her hands in her lap. "I have 90 days, she said. 90 days sober, as of today." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, bronze-colored chip. She held it in her palm, offering it for me to see. I looked at the chip. I looked at her face. The defiance, the panic, the deception, all were gone. In their place was a weary, fragile honesty. "That is a significant achievement," I said. "You have worked hard." "I have." She closed her fingers around the chip for a moment, then held it out again. "I want you to have this." I was still. "That is your token. You earned it." "I know, but you built the road to the meeting where I got it. I wouldn't have walked it if you hadn't done what you did." Her voice thickened. "I hated you for it, for a long time. I thought you were a cold, controlling witch, but you were the only one who didn't enable me. You were the only one who loved me enough to show me the cliff. Everyone else was trying to gently steer me away from the edge. You put up a fence and said if I climbed it, I would fall. And then you let me try to climb it. And when I fell, you didn't point and laugh. You showed me the lifeboat. That's not control. That's mercy, the hardest kind." She placed the chip on the coffee table between us. It made a soft click on the wood. I looked at the small bronze circle. It represented pain, terror, hard work, and a choice repeated 90 times. It was a solid thing. "Thank you," I said. The words were inadequate, but they were all I had. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm still sorry, every day, for what I did to you." "I know," I said. And for the first time, I believed the sorrow was real and not just fear of consequences. She did not stay long. When she left, I picked up the chip. It was warm from her hand. I held it in my palm, this small, cold, hard symbol of a war fought in silence and in paperwork, in ultimatums and in treatment centers. My revenge had been to force a truth so stark it could not be escaped. The victory was not mine. It was hers, but I had held the space for it to be possible. I placed the chip on the mantelpiece. It looked like nothing much, but it was everything. The chip remained on the mantelpiece. I did not move it. It sat between a small framed photo of Robert and a porcelain vase. It was not a decoration. It was a landmark, a mile marker on a road we had all traveled, willingly or not. Months passed. The structured agreement, now irrelevant, was filed away in my safe. The Sunday dinners continued, evolving from obligatory check-ins into a genuine, if quiet, ritual. We did not speak of the past unless it was necessary. We spoke of work, of the garden, of a movie one of us had seen. The conversations were ordinary. Their ordinariness was the point. In late summer, I decided to host a barbecue. A small one, just me, Marcus, Chloe, and my friends Gloria and Jean. I extended the invitation on a Wednesday. They all accepted. On Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen, preparing the potato salad my mother used to make. The doorbell rang. It was Chloe, 2 hours early. She held a large bowl covered with foil. "I made a kale salad," she said, stepping inside. "With apples and walnuts. I remembered you said you liked it at that restaurant." "Thank you," I said, taking the bowl. "You're early." "Marcus is at the store getting charcoal. He'll be along. I thought you might need help setting up." I did need help. I had planned to do it myself. "The folding chairs are in the garage. The tablecloth is in the hall closet." She nodded and went to work. I watched her from the kitchen window as she carried the chairs to the patio, unfolded them, and wiped them down with a cloth. Her movements were purposeful, not frantic. She spread the tablecloth and centered the patio umbrella. It was simple, competent help. The kind one family member offers another without being asked. By the time Marcus arrived with the charcoal and Jean and Gloria appeared with a peach cobbler, the backyard was ready. The grill was lit. The food was arranged on the table. The afternoon was warm, the sky clear. We ate. The talk was easy, flowing around me. Gloria told a funny story about a misadventure at her gardening club. Jean asked Marcus about a software upgrade at his job. Chloe listened, smiling at the right moments. She did not dominate the conversation. She did not try to perform. At one point, Marcus got up to tend the grill. Chloe leaned over to Jean and asked her a question about the cobbler recipe. I watched the interaction. It was normal, unremarkable. A year ago, such a scene would have been an impossible fiction. Later, as the sun began to lower, Chloe gathered the empty plates. She carried a stack into the kitchen. I followed with the serving bowls. She was at the sink, rinsing a plate before putting it in the dishwasher. I began to put away leftovers. "Marcus seems good," I said. "He is," she replied, not turning around. "His group meetings helped. He understands things differently now. We talk, actually talk." I closed the refrigerator door. "And you?" She shut off the water and turned, drying her hands on a towel. "I have a sponsor. I see my counselor every other week. Some days are harder than others, but the hard days are just days now. They're not emergencies." I nodded. That was the goal, to turn crises into manageable days. "I'm paying off the last of the restitution next month," she added. "Ahead of schedule." "That is good to hear." She hesitated, then spoke again, her voice lower. "I saw my doctor, a real one. We're working on a pain management plan that is that. For my back, it's slow, but it's honest." "Honest is the only foundation that holds," I said. She met my eyes and gave a small, firm nod. "Yes." We finished cleaning in a comfortable silence. When we returned to the patio, Gloria and Jean were preparing to leave. They hugged me, and then, to my slight surprise, they each hugged Chloe as well. "You take care, sweetheart," Jean said. Gloria simply squeezed her shoulder. It was an absolution offered not by me, but by my community of women. It mattered. After they left, Marcus and Chloe stayed to help fold the chairs. We worked together, the three of us, under the fatting, peach-colored sky. There was no tension, only the practical collaboration of cleaning up after a gathering. When everything was put away, they stood by their car. "Thanks, Mom," Marcus said. "It was a good day." "It was," I agreed. Chloe looked at me. "Good night, Elle." "Good night, Chloe. Drive safely." I watched their car disappear down the street. I locked the back door. I walked through my quiet, clean house. I paused in the living room, my eyes going to the mantelpiece. The bronze chip caught the last of the evening light from the window. I had set out for revenge. I had wanted justice, retribution, a restoration of balance. I had thought it would feel like a triumph. It did not feel like that. It felt like this quiet evening. It felt like a kale salad offered without prompting. It felt like a son who looked less haunted. It felt like a daughter-in-law who could meet my gaze without shame or defiance. My revenge had been to refuse to participate in the destruction, to build a wall of consequences so high that the only way out was to climb up, not to tunnel under. I had forced the truth into the open, and then I had forced a structure upon it. I had been called cold, controlling, a witch. Perhaps I was for a time. But the result was not a broken family. It was a different family. A family with scars, yes. A family that had looked into an abyss and slowly, painfully, stepped back from the edge. The trust was not what it was before. It was something new, forged in the fire of hard truth. It was more careful, more deliberate. It was stronger for having been tested and for having held. I turned off the living room light. The chip was just a dark circle on the mantel now, a reminder, not of her failure but of our collective endurance. I had prescribed justice. The dosage had been severe. The treatment had been long. But the patient in the end was not just Chloe. It was all of us. And we were finally well.